Hi friends, today we have a sixth chapter, that is citizenship of polity from NCRT textbook. So first we can define the citizenship. The citizenship implies full and equal membership of a political community. Okay, citizenship, it implies full and equal membership of a political community. The theories of democratic citizenship claim that citizenship should be universal. For refugees or illegal migrants, no state is willing to grant them membership and live in precarious conditions. They are not guaranteed rights. So we know about the refugees and some illegal migrants are there in India and also in certain countries. So no state is willing to grant the membership and they are living in precarious conditions. They are not guaranteed rights. So here we emerging the importance of citizenship. Equality of rights and status is one of the basic rights of citizenship. So in the case of citizenship, the equality of rights and status is one of the basic rights. Struggles to achieve full membership and equal rights continue even now in many parts of the world. We know in many of the countries the migrants or refugees are struggling a lot in order to achieve their full membership and equal rights. Purpose of women's movement and Dalits movement is to change public opinion by drawing attention to their needs and to influence government policy to ensure them equal rights and opportunities. So apart from these migrants or illegal migrants or refugees, certain Dalit communities or women are there who are also struggling to achieve this citizenship. The citizenship not only a relationship between states and their members, also about citizen relations, and involves certain obligations of citizens to each other and to the society. So when we hear the term citizenship, we may think that this is only a relationship between the states and their members. But it is also a relation between the citizens, and it also involves certain obligations of citizens to each other and to the society. And there is also a moral obligation to participate in and contribute to the shared life of the communities. So they are also the people just as ourselves. So they have the same right that is we have. So the citizens should be treated in an equal manner just as ourselves. Citizens are also considered to be the inheritors and trustees of culture and natural resources of the country. So the citizens are considered to be the inheritors and trustees of culture and natural resources of the country. Then comes the full and equal membership. Labor tends to migrate in search of jobs when the opportunities are not available near their homes. So mostly the migrant workers are in search of jobs because they are not getting suitable jobs near their homes. That is why they are traveling from their own homeland to other states or other countries. If the jobs are scarce in a region, local residents may resent competition from outsiders. We know some of the underemployment or no employment is mostly we can see in our country, so that they are struggling a lot between with the competitors in various fields of India. So it is saying that the local residents are or affecting with a certain competition from the outsiders. So it's making some types of unemployment in our country. The citizens are free to try and influence public opinion and government policy by forming groups, holding demonstrations, using the media, appealing to political parties, or by approaching the courts, etc. So, the citizens are free to try and influence public opinion and government policy by forming groups, holding demonstrations, using the media, appealing to political parties, or by approaching the courts. Most issues in societies should be settled by negotiation and discussion rather than force. So, when we deal with some of the issues of society, there may be some types of struggles, fights, some types of force. So instead of that, there should be some type of negotiations and discussions. And next, Martin Luther King. The 1950s witnessed the emergence of civil rights movement against inequalities in many of the southern states of USA. So we may hear about the term civil rights that was occurred in USA. So there were some of the black-white discriminations and type of segregations there. So that led to some civil rights movements against the inequalities. Hence the segregation law through which the black people were denied many civil and political rights. Their laws created separate areas for colored and white people in railways, bus, theatre, housing, hotel, etc. So during that time, for black people and white people, there were separate theatre, bus, hotels, railways, etc. That much segregation was existed in that time in US. Martin Luther King gave many arguments against the prevailing laws of segregation. So mainly three arguments by Martin Luther King are here. First argument is, in terms of self-worth and dignity, every human person in the world is equal regardless of one's race or color. So, according to Martin Luther King, his first argument was, in terms of self-worth and dignity, every human person in the world is equal regardless of one's race or color. The second argument is, segregation is like social leprosy on the body politics because it inflicts deep psychological wounds on the people who suffer as a result of such laws. So here Martin Luther King, who compares this type of segregation as social leprosy. So that will make certain wounds on the people. Then the third argument is, the segregation laws create artificial boundaries between people and prevent them from cooperating with each other for the overall benefit of the country. For these reasons, Martin Luther King argued that these laws should be abolished. He said in one of his speeches that we must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. So this is all about Martin Luther King and his arguments against this type of discriminations. Then comes equal rights. Dealing with the problem of the poor in towns is one of the urgent problems facing the government today. There is a large population of slum dwellers and squatters in every city in India. So we know a lot of urban people are there in slums as living as slum dwellers and squatters. So the government is struggling a lot not to provide proper care for that people. They are often viewed as unwelcome visitors by the rest of town population. So the most of the people are looking in a kind of ugly towards them. They may be blamed for staining the resources of the city or for spreading crime and diseases. So such poor people who are living in slum areas or streets may be blamed for staining the resources of city or for spreading crime and diseases. Many people may be crammed into small rooms with private toilets, running water and sanitation. Life and property are insecure in a slum. So we know about Dharavi slum areas in Mumbai. They are struggling a lot. Nowadays I think they have a public common toilet. But apart from that, other slum areas are there. So they are fighting a lot because they are devoid of any type of private toilets, running water, sanitation, etc. They may be hawkers, petty traders, scavengers or domestic workers, plumbers or mechanics, among other professions, make a big contribution to the economy through their labor. So most of the people in that area we know are daily wage workers. So they are mostly or a greater portion of our economy. A national policy on urban street vendors was framed in January 2004. Street vendors face harassments from the police and town authorities. So the supreme authorities like police or town authorities also harassing the street vendors instead of treating them well. The policy was intended to provide recognition and regulation for vendors to enable them to carry on their profession without harassment so long as they obeyed government regulations. So certain policies are there intended for them, and these policies enable them to carry on their profession without harassment so long as they obeyed government regulations. The slum dwellers are becoming aware of their rights and are beginning to organize to demand them. So nowadays the slum dwellers who are very aware of their own rights and they are making some groups, movements for their rights. The tribal people and forest dwellers are becoming marginalized. They are dependent on access to forest and other natural resources to maintain their way of life. They face threats to their way of life and livelihood because of the pressure of increasing populations and the search for land and resources to maintain them. So we know mostly the tribal people or forest dwellers are who are mostly depending on the forest and the natural resources. But the increasing population, that is a threat to that people. And the threat is for tourist industry mining in for forest. Okay, yeah, the forest in the case of forest, the natural resources are facing a lot of threats because industrialization and mining like activities are becoming a cuts for that natural resources. The government are struggling with the problem of how to protect the people and their habitat without at the same time endangering development of country. So at the same time the government has to balance the development and also the conservation of the environment. To make people more equal, the different needs and claims of people would have to be taken into account when framing policies. So when certain development are taking place in an area, so the people who are inhabiting in that area should be treated well in terms of their rights because it is their homeland, and the culture aspect are there which are binding with them. Providing equal rights and protection to all citizens should be one of the guiding principles of government policies. Then the citizen and the nation states claim that their boundaries define not just a territory but also unique culture and shared history. So our boundaries define not just a territory but also a unique culture and shared history. National identity may be expressed through symbols like a flag, national anthem, national language, or certain ceremonial practices. So we know certain national symbols, flag, national anthem, national language, and certain ceremonial practices are there which are indicating our national identity. National identity of a democratic state is supposed to provide citizens with a political identity that can be shared by all the members of the state. A United States which prides itself on being a country of immigrants as any other country. So we know in the United States a lot of the most population are the immigrants, so they are proud of it. So in case of France, which claims to be both secular and inclusive, so it is a point, and the criteria for granting citizenship to new applicants varies from country to country. So in India, for granting the citizenship to the people, some criteria are there, so that is different from other countries. In Israel, Germany, the factors like religion or ethnic religion may be given priority when granting citizenship. So in the case of India, there may not be any religion or religious aspects or cultural aspects for granting citizenship, but for countries like Israel or Germany, they are taking some factors like religion or ethnic religion for priority for granting citizenship. The Indian Constitution attempted to accommodate a very diverse society. The Republic Day parade in Delhi symbolizes the attempt of the state to include people of different regions, cultures, and religions. So when we think about the Republic Day that is taking place in our India every year, we can see a lot of people from various regions are participating in that parade. So that is our cultural diversity, or that is indicating our diversity of India. In India, citizenship can be acquired by birth, descent, registration, naturalization, or inclusion of territory. So for India, for the citizenship, some criteria are there related with our birth, descent, registration, naturalization, or inclusion of territory. The rights of religious and linguistic minorities are also protected. Then universal citizenship. The states use their power to keep unwanted visitors out, because the reason is that there may be some terrorist or unwanted people among the immigrants or illegal migrants. That is why our state is using certain power to keep unwanted visitors out. People may be displaced by wars, persecution, famine, or other reasons. If no state is willing to accept them and they cannot return home, they become stateless peoples or refugees. So when does refugees and stateless peoples are there? Because various reasons are there. It may be due to some types of natural disasters or famine, persecution, or war. That is why the people are migrating from one country to another. and most of the time the states, they don't accept those visitors inside their country, so that they will become stateless peoples or refugees. Often they cannot legally work or educate their children or acquire property. So the United Nations has appointed a high commissioner for refugees to try to help them. So we know those refugees are facing a lot of problems related with their education for their children, in the case of their property and their employment, like that. So that in order to protect those people, United Nations has appointed a high commissioner for refugees to try to help them. Then comes the global citizenship. The supporters of global citizenship argue that although a world community and a global society doesn't yet exist, the people already feel linked to each other across national boundaries. So we know there is no a type of global society or world community is existing, but the people already feel linked to each other across national boundaries. They would say that the outpouring of help from all parts of the world for victims of the Asian tsunami and other major calamities is a sign of the emergence of a global society. So we know the for natural disasters like tsunami, there is no boundary for them, so that in that case the people affected may become a global community. In that cases, for the formation of a global society, there should be cooperative action by the people and government of many states. Hereby we can ensure acceptable solution to the issue of migrants and stateless people. So the people who are living with each other, that is just like kind of a global community, then only all the people can treat every people in an equal manner, and they can accept all the people as same, and thus we can remove all types of stateless people's issues and also the issues of migrants. So the people have to accept this as a global community, then only we can protect those people. Then comes the citizenship, equality and rights. So T.H. Marshall in his book Citizenship and Social Class defined citizenship as, so T.H. Marshall is a person who in his book Citizenship and Social Class saying something about citizenship. So according to T.H. Marshall, a citizenship is a status bestowed on those who are full members of a community. All who possess the status are equal with respect to the rights and duties with which the status is endowed. The key concept in Marshall's idea of citizenship is that of equality. Okay, so according to T.H. Marshall, he is something saying about the citizenship. So he defines citizenship in a good manner. So in his concept, the main idea of citizenship is equality. This implies two things. The first thing is the quality of given rights and duties. Okay, the quality of given rights and duties. The second is quantity of people upon whom they are bestowed grows. According to him, citizenship involves three kinds of rights: civil rights, political rights and social rights. Civil rights protect the individual's life, liberty and property, and the political rights enable the individual to participate in the process of governance. The social rights give the individual access to education and employment. Together, they make it possible for the citizen to lead a life of dignity. So, the citizenship facilitates the creation of a better, integrated, and harmonious community. So, it's all about the citizenship defined by T.H. Marshall. So, here our chapter is ending. So, have a nice day, guys.